Last episode, you asked me what the Cubs had to do to not be sellers at the deadline, and I said they needed to play 700 ball. I don't know if you recall me
I
saying
do. I do recall
700
your.
ball.
I do recall your fool's gold reasons for them to
Lo
not
and
be sellers.
lo and behold, they've won 7 out of the last 10 games. In fact, they've won 7 out of their last 8 games. So they've done what I've asked. They're now 1 game below 500. They're still several games back in the division and
A
the
lot of
wild
a
card
lot of
race.
stiff
But
competition there.
yeah, well, that's the thing. We're already seeing Cincinnati fade a bit. Cubs are playing Cincinnati next week, I believe. So that's gonna just after the deadline, of course. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I mean, as we talked about, Stroman would be probably their primary trade asset to move at the deadline. And really, since that fucking London series, he's been a disaster. His last 6 starts, he's got an 8 ERA. He gave up 7 earned runs last night. I haven't seen that his velocity is necessarily down, but there's something that's clearly not right with him. Is he running out of gas? I don't know, but his trade value has plummeted. So maybe, if he had been pitching better down this stretch, maybe the Cubs would be more motivated to trade him because they'd be able to get more for him. But I think they're less motivated at this point. He might be less motivated to waive his actually opt out of his deal and just would come back for the money he's owed next year. I think that's one reason they're definitely not going to sell him at this point. This is our last podcast before the trade deadline and for a few weeks afterwards. So got to put my final decisions in on this. So I'm going to say they're not trading Marcus Stroman. I also think they're not going to trade Cody Bellinger. And I think they're really going to hope to sign him long term, whether it's before the end of the season or in the off season. He's exactly what they need. He's proven to be the left-handed power bat that they've been lacking, and he is producing for sure, including last night. He's perfect for him, and he's struggled over the last few years, and somehow the Cubs have unlocked whatever the issue was with him.
Right.
I heard a stat with his hard hit ball rate is lower than it was in previous years, but his average is higher and everything else is higher. So I think he might be sacrificing his, all out crazy swings for maybe commonly referred to as a B hack, that just not going all out, being more precise with his swings and getting actually better results out of it. So whatever it is, the results are on the field and palpable. So that's another reason I think they're not going to be selling. Third reason that the Cubs will not be selling at this deadline is a little bit of Marquee Network drama. I don't know if you heard this, but a few weeks ago,
subscription.
The Cubs a few weeks ago, I told you the Cubs would be releasing a direct-to-consumer version of the Marquee Network app, where in-market Cubs fans can actually watch their team on their phones, on their iPads, on their whatever streaming device they have for the first time ever without a cable subscription. So they have now untethered watching the Cubs with any cable company for the first time. So what was also interesting about that is I think I was speculating it would come in about $25 a month based on what the Yankees and Red Sox have done. It comes in at $20 a month. So while that's still pretty high, it is not on the high end of what I thought it would be. So I think putting myself back in Chicago, if I was living there, I wouldn't have a problem with $20. I'd be happier with 15, but $20 a month for Marquee Network, I think I would be happy to not have a cable subscription and pay that to watch the Cubs in market. That's the same as what the Tigers actually have with the Bally Sports app, Bally Sports Detroit. That also includes Red Wings and Pistons games, of course. But so the price point at least isn't as outrageous as I thought. But that being released this week, I thought was really curious timing because all of a sudden they are going to be doing everything they can to get subscribers to that. And if you trade away your best players a week into that effort, it doesn't really make good business sense. So that's yet another reason why I think that the Cubs will not be sellers at the deadline. And I'm wondering if you notice how I've carefully worded that, and I'm not saying that they're going to be buyers necessarily or big buyers. I think they're just going to not sell away those guys. I think they're going to hold on to, the top end of their farm system for sure. Not trying to trade for some big name starter or relief pitchers. I think they might make some small moves, adding some bullpen depth, potentially a fourth or fifth starter. I don't think they'll be doing that. They need more offense more than anything. So we'll see what they do. Maybe hopefully they can find something at third or first base, which is difficult to do, of course. But those are their needs. I think the smaller needs that they might fill. You've rolled your eyes at my idea that they wouldn't be sellers, but I'm also want to make sure you understand that I'm not saying that they're going to be big buyers either. I think they're kind of going to be more in the middle of the road for all the reasons I put forth. So I don't know. You're gonna say I'm full of shit, or what do you got over there?
Oh no, I think the way you laid it out, protecting your theories by, the Cubs aren't going to do it because of the Marquee Network and this and that is fine. I don't think they should though. I think they're idiots for not. They are 13 games below 500 against teams with winning records. So if they keep the team, if they don't add majorly and keep the team as it is today, that means if they make the playoffs, they're a first round exit. Also, if they don't go after it and add, now again, if they don't do anything and do modestly and at least keep the team in place, they are aiding themselves in getting a lot of Marquee Network subscriptions. So I agree with you 100% on that. But they are also doing a disservice to everyone who's a fan. Because
of what they could get back for Stroman and Bellinger?
Yeah, and also for the fact that if you don't go in and really add, everyone else ahead of you is going to do that. They are going to make major moves. The guys you have to leave to get to the wild card or to your division are going to be adding. You're not the only team who's out there. And they obviously, based on their record right now, do not have enough to do it.
Well, I'm going to dispute that because we've seen firsthand that the Brewers don't do that. They actually traded away Josh Hader last year at this point. So they found ways to compete while trading away assets. So I'm not sure that's a foregone conclusion. So,
and what did they do in the playoffs?
Well, sure, but
that's my opportunity. Point. It's a disservice.
I get your point.
What the Brewers did was a disservice to the fans.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But what I was trying to get you to talk about is the opportunity cost of not trading Stroman and Bellinger. Like what do you think they're missing out on if they don't trade Stroman at this point? Do you think the Cubs could get the same return that you just got for Giolito?
Maybe. They're looking at the collective work, and there's going to be a team there. Obviously, the Angels think can do something with Ronaldo Lopez. Like they see something, they talk to the pitching coach. The Sox have done it a ton of freaking times with Don Cooper. I watched Stroman though last night. Like he's just not throwing a lot of strikes. That's what his problem is right now. And he was lucky that was one of the worst plate umpires for both guys and for every hitter. Every hitter was screwed last night because it was the most inconsistent strike zone. But watching Jimenez, which
scored 17 runs somehow, but
this is not how the White Sox lost. But watching Jimenez get called out on a ball 2 inches off the plate below his knees is terrible. But watching Stroman last night, like the Sox, started to adjust and he doesn't have an overpowering fastball. So that's actually in their wheelhouse for scoring a lot of runs. So that's why they scored a lot of runs last night. But he also he didn't have the pinpoint control when I watched him earlier this season. a couple times, which he could easily get back in like a freaking week and be fine. But
Well,
it's
it
just
hasn't
shitty
happened
going into the trade deadline.
for 6 starts. It's not just one bad start. That's the problem. That's what every GM is going to use against Jed Hoyer in any kind of negotiation. So,
Well, I think
I think
trading
you're
Cody,
overestimating what like the disservice
okay.
that they're giving Cubs fans.
Well, they're doing a
moving
disservice for not trading Cody Bellinger. Then I think we can all agree on that because there's a return. For
I don't, because I think they want to sign him long term. I think he is their future, and when you trade him away, you hurt some potential to sign him long term. So you
think
many
they're already going to work out? They got, because the deal's not going to happen midseason because Boris doesn't do that. His agent is Scott Boris, so they're going to have to wait until the offseason to do it.
Boris does whatever his clients tell him to do, and he says that. So if Bellinger wants to be there, he will be there, and he's shown no signs that he doesn't want to be there. I'm not in his head. I don't know that, but to put it on Boris is not accurate.
Well, it is somewhat accurate because he's going to consult his client and he's going to tell him it's in your best. It's for the best for you to wait until the off season.
That's what he did last year, and he signed with the Cubs. So I think you and I are just going to disagree fundamentally on that. But I
mean, enjoy not making the playoffs by not adding anything. I think if you don't trade in these guys, you have to do some sort of major addition. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying, you got to go one way. You got to go all in, or then trade the guys.
I don't believe that. And you and I've on this podcast, the history of this podcast, you see things as black and white. I see things as shades of gray, and that's why I'm halfway in the middle. I know it drives you crazy. You drive me crazy with that too. So that's probably why we enjoyed this podcast. But I think this is another example of how we just view things differently. So I think we can just agree to disagree on that point.
13 games under 500 about teams with winning records. Enjoy it, Smitty.
Yeah, and you didn't have any issues with that every time I brought it up about the White Sox for the last 2 years, but it didn't stop you from going gung-ho into the ether. So I don't know.
Well,
it's just
not at the
interesting
trade deadline.
You use those.
Not at the
Absolutely, it was at the trade deadline. Yes, I mean, if you want to look at the old podcast, go ahead. But I think we could just move on from this because we're not going to agree.
Wordhole Media.